There's a strange, quiet truth about relationships that few ever talk about. Love doesn't always start with trust. It builds it. And before it grows roots, it's tested. You see, loyalty isn't proven when things are easy. It's revealed when everything feels uncertain. And whether we admit it or not, men, consciously or unconsciously, often test the loyalty of the woman beside them. Not out of cruelty, but out of a deep, fragile need to know, will she still stand by me when the shine wears off? Will she still choose me when I stumble? Today, we'll explore 7 shocking ways men test your loyalty and how these tests often reveal far more about their hearts than about yours. There is a strange kind of silence that creeps into relationships, quiet, unsettling, and heavy with unspoken questions. It arrives without warning. One day the messages are frequent, the laughter is easy, the calls last for hours, and then suddenly the rhythm changes. The replies grow shorter, the spaces between words stretch longer, and the warmth that once filled the air feels faint. You begin to wonder if you imagined it all, if affection can evaporate as swiftly as it once appeared. But often, what you're feeling in that quiet is not rejection. It's a test, the test of silence. It's in those moments of pause when he withdraws into himself that he's not just pulling away, he's watching, not always consciously, not always with intent, but with an instinct born from past scars. He is trying to see whether your care depends on his attention or whether it stands on its own. Because loyalty to him is not proven by words. It's revealed in stillness. He wants to know if you are there for him, not just for the thrill of being wanted. This silence can feel cruel. You replay every conversation, searching for the sentence that might have caused it. You check your phone 100 times a day, convincing yourself that maybe it just slipped his mind. You tell yourself you won't text again, yet you find your fingers hovering over the keyboard. But if you step back for a moment, you'll see that silence is not always punishment. Sometimes it's a mirror, reflecting your own strength, your patience, your sense of worth. Many women mistake a man's quietness for the beginning of the end. Yet often, it's simply his way of seeing whether your loyalty is tethered to the noise or anchored in something deeper. The woman who meets silence with calm grace rather than panic teaches him a profound lesson. She shows that her heart is not reactive, it is steady. She does not beg for attention or demand constant reassurance. She trusts her presence enough to know that she does not need to chase what is already hers. There is a story that illustrates this perfectly. A woman once told me about the early months of her relationship. He used to text me good morning every single day, she said. Then one week he just stopped. No reason, no explanation. I felt sick. I thought he was losing interest, so I waited. I didn't play games. I didn't send angry messages. I simply carried on with my life. A few days later, he came back, more open than before. When she asked what had happened, he said quietly, I needed to know that your love didn't depend on my effort, that it was real even when I stopped performing. That's the truth behind this test, a search for sincerity. Men, even the strongest, carry a deep-seated fear of conditional love, a fear that the affection they receive is only a reflection of what they give, not of who they are. So sometimes, without realizing it, they retreat. They fall silent, hoping to see whether your heart remains soft or turns cold. And here's where the real strength lies, not in trying to fill the silence, but in learning to breathe within it. The ones who can sit in that quiet space without losing their sense of peace are the ones who pass this test with grace. It doesn't mean ignoring your feelings or pretending indifference. It means understanding that another person's silence does not define your worth. There is a delicate balance between patience and self-respect. Loyalty does not mean waiting forever for someone to speak. It means holding space for them without losing your own voice. It's okay to check in gently, to express your concern without accusation. It's okay to care, but what matters most is the energy behind your actions. Are you reaching out from love or from fear, from confidence or from desperation? Because silence has power, not just to test relationships, but to reveal truths. It shows you how deeply you trust, how strongly you stand, and how well you understand yourself. In those quiet spaces, you learn whether you love someone for who they are or for the way they make you feel. You learn that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is not to react, but to allow both hearts a moment to breathe. It's easy to stay when the words are flowing, when affection is loud and validation constant, but true loyalty is proven in the absence of noise. It's in the patience of a woman who doesn't rush to assume betrayal, who doesn't crumble when the attention fades for a while. She doesn't let silence dictate her story. She understands that not all quiet is abandonment. Sometimes it's a pause before a deeper connection. Psychologists say that men often retreat into silence as a way of processing emotions they don't yet know how to express. Society teaches them to be strong, to fix things alone, to keep their struggles locked inside. So when they withdraw, it's not always to push you away, it's to protect you from the chaos within. In that sense, your response becomes a reflection of emotional safety. Do you make the silence heavier with anxiety or lighter with understanding? Think of it like this: silence is the night sky. You can curse the darkness, or you can look for the stars. Those stars are small gestures, a calm message, a gentle smile, the quiet trust that doesn't demand instant resolution. When you offer that, you become the light he looks for in the dark. And sometimes that's all he needs to return. Not a flood of words, not a storm of questions, just the quiet assurance that he is not being judged for needing space. It's important to remember, though, that loyalty should never be blind. Silence that becomes a pattern used to manipulate or control is not a test, it's a warning. You deserve communication, not confusion. You deserve peace, not uncertainty. But if you can sense the difference, if your intuition tells you this silence is not cruelty but fear, then respond with empathy, not panic. In that moment, you rise above the game. You become the calm in his storm. You show that loyalty doesn't mean clinging, it means believing, and that belief can change everything. One day, when the words return, they will come softer, more genuine, more grateful, because he will have learned what your silence meant. Not indifference, but faith. The kind of faith that doesn't demand constant reassurance, because it already knows its place. So, when words disappear and the world grows quiet, do not fill the silence with fear, fill it with understanding. Hold your ground. Let the stillness speak for you. Because in that stillness, your loyalty becomes visible, not through effort or explanation, but through grace. And when he finally realizes that your love did not falter in the quiet, he will see something most men spend years searching for, not perfection, not passion, but peace. The peace of knowing that loyalty doesn't vanish when the words do. It endures, it waits, it listens, it stays. There comes a moment in every relationship when the curtain of perfection falls away, and what stands before you is no longer the polished version of someone you once idealized. The jokes that once seemed effortlessly charming now repeat themselves. The confidence that once captivated you begins to crack under the weight of real life. You start to notice the things that were once invisible: impatience, pride, fear, insecurity. And it is in that moment, when the glitter fades and the truth emerges, that the real test begins. The test of imperfection. In the early glow of love, everything feels flawless. You look at someone and see endless potential, not their scars. The heart beats faster, the eyes soften, and every word feels like poetry. But this version of love is only the prologue. It's the dream before reality arrives. Real love, the kind that endures, begins not when everything is beautiful, but when you choose to stay even when it's not. There is a quiet power in seeing someone as they truly are, unguarded, uncertain, and flawed. It's one thing to admire a person when they're shining in their success, confident and in control. It's another thing entirely to still see their worth when they falter, when they make mistakes, when they let you down. It's in those moments that the fragile illusion of perfection shatters, and what's left is truth, raw, honest, human truth. So many people chase the idea of a perfect partner. They want the fairy tale without the flaws, the connection without the challenge. But life has a way of showing us that perfection is an illusion. The people we love will disappoint us, not because they intend to, but because they are human. They will speak out of anger, act out of fear, and make choices that sting. And yet, it is often through those very cracks that love deepens, because flaws invite empathy, and empathy builds understanding. I once heard a story about a woman who, in the first year of her marriage, found herself questioning everything. Her husband, once full of humor and warmth, had grown distant under the pressure of work. He snapped easily, forgot small promises, and seemed lost in his own world. She felt invisible. One evening, as she packed to leave, she noticed an old photograph on their dresser, him smiling, carefree, before life had weighed him down. She realized then that he wasn't cruel, he was tired. So instead of walking away, she sat beside him in silence and simply said, "You don't have to be perfect for me to love you." That moment became the foundation of their future. Not because it fixed everything, but because it reminded them both that love isn't admiration for perfection, it's compassion for imperfection. When you allow someone to be imperfect, you give them permission to be real, and in return, you discover your own strength, your capacity to love beyond conditions. The truth is, most people are not afraid of being unloved. They're afraid of being unlovable. They fear that once their flaws are seen, they will no longer be chosen. So they hide behind masks, performance, and control. But when you show them that you can see their flaws and still choose them, something miraculous happens. They soften. They begin to trust. They start to believe that love might not be something you earn, but something you receive. Yet, loving someone's imperfections doesn't mean accepting mistreatment or losing yourself in the process. True loyalty isn't blind, it's balanced. It means standing by someone while they grow, not while they stagnate. It means offering patience without becoming a martyr. It's the quiet strength to say, I see your flaws, but I also see your potential. It's understanding that sometimes love isn't about fixing someone, it's about holding space for them to fix themselves. In a world obsessed with filters and flawless facades, choosing to love the unpolished parts of another person is an act of courage. We are conditioned to believe that love should always feel easy, that happiness means never struggling. But the truth is, the most meaningful relationships are not built in moments of ease. They are forged in moments of imperfection. They are born when two people look at each other and say, I know we're not perfect, and neither am I, but we'll learn together. It is often the flaws that make someone unforgettable, the way they ramble when they're nervous, the stubborn streak that drives you mad, the vulnerability they hide beneath a strong front. Those are the things that make them real. Perfection may impress us, but imperfection connects us. It reminds us that we are not alone in our struggles, that we are all learning, stumbling, growing. Psychologists say that lasting relationships are built not on similarity or passion alone, but on what they call emotional resilience. This is the ability to face imperfections, both your own and your partner's, without running away. When you stop expecting constant perfection, you make space for authenticity. You stop trying to control every outcome, and instead you begin to understand that love is not a destination. It's a continuous act of acceptance. The test of imperfection is not just about how you see the other person. It's also about how you see yourself. When you can forgive another's flaws, you learn to forgive your own. When you extend compassion outward, it inevitably reflects inward, because every act of patience you offer teaches your heart to be gentler, not weaker. It shows you that strength isn't in criticism, it's in kindness. There's an old saying that people fall in love with the best parts of you, but stay in love with the broken ones. That may sound poetic, but there's truth in it. The moments that truly bond two people are rarely the perfect ones. They're the messy, complicated, vulnerable times, the arguments that end in tears, the confessions made in the dark, the quiet apologies that bridge the distance between hearts. Those are the moments that build trust, that remind us that love isn't about never falling apart. It's about always finding our way back. Loving someone's imperfections is an act of faith. Faith in their ability to grow, faith in your capacity to understand, faith in the belief that love is not fragile. The people who pass this test do not do so by pretending flaws don't exist, but by seeing beauty within them. They know that imperfection doesn't make love weaker, it makes it more real. The world will always try to convince you to search for the perfect partner, the perfect relationship, the perfect moment. But the truth is, perfection is sterile. It leaves no room for surprise, no space for grace. The most profound love stories are written in the language of imperfection. The trembling hands, the uncertain words, the forgiveness that arrives too late but still heals. So when you face the test of imperfection, remember that love is not about finding someone who never fails you. It's about finding someone whose flaws you can live with and whose growth you can believe in. Because in the end, the ones who love despite imperfection don't just build relationships. They build something far greater, understanding, compassion, and a kind of loyalty that endures long after perfection fades. There are moments in every relationship when temptation doesn't arrive as an obvious threat, but as a whisper. Subtle, playful, harmless on the surface, it might come in the form of a compliment from a stranger, a lingering glance, or the casual mention of another person's name that makes the air suddenly heavier. And it is in those small, almost invisible moments that the test begins, the test of temptation. It isn't always about betrayal in the physical sense. More often, it's about emotional discipline, the quiet challenge of choosing respect over reaction. Temptation, in its many forms, reveals the truth of what we value most. It's not about the other person who enters the picture. It's about how we respond when our pride is nudged, our insecurities are stirred, and our need for control begins to whisper louder than love. Many people assume loyalty is tested when someone is unfaithful, but it's also tested in how we handle the idea of competition, the suspicion, the jealousy, the instinct to protect what we love by force instead of faith. When someone you care for brings another person into the conversation, even casually, a flicker of uncertainty lights within you. You feel that sudden ache of comparison. Are they smarter, more beautiful, more interesting? The instinct to react can be overwhelming. You want to defend your place, to prove your worth, to remind them of what they already have. But true strength doesn't shout, it trusts. The people who rise above this test are not those who suppress emotion, but those who understand that emotional control is not weakness, it's wisdom. There is power in restraint, in refusing to let fear make decisions for you. The urge to react is natural. Jealousy is, after all, a symptom of care, but when you choose respect over reaction, you demonstrate a higher kind of loyalty, not just to the relationship, but to your own integrity. You show that your love is not built on insecurity, but on confidence, not on possession, but on partnership. I once heard a story about a woman who, early in her relationship, found herself confronted with temptation in a subtle but painful way. Her partner often spoke of a co-worker, a woman who shared his humor, his ambitions, even his coffee breaks. The first few times she laughed it off, pretending not to notice the tone in his voice when he mentioned her name. But one evening as they sat at dinner, he told her that this co-worker had complimented him, said he looked different lately, happier. The woman felt the familiar burn of jealousy rise inside her, sharp and hot, begging to be released in accusation. But instead of reacting, she paused. She smiled and said quietly, "I'm glad others can see what I've seen all along." That night, he looked at her with a mix of surprise and admiration, not because she ignored the situation, but because she handled it with dignity. That's the quiet victory of respect. It diffuses tension without surrendering pride. It transforms what could have been a battle of egos into a lesson in maturity. The test of temptation is not just about resisting the pull of another. It's about mastering the impulse to react from fear. It asks you, can you trust your worth without needing to prove it? There's a kind of grace that comes from knowing you don't have to compete. When you react with anger or accusation, you feed the insecurity that temptation thrives on. But when you respond with calm assurance, you remind both yourself and your partner that love is not a game of comparison. It's a choice made daily, freely, and consciously. Temptation will always exist. There will always be people who seem more charming, more exciting, more perfect in fleeting ways. But real connection isn't about novelty. It's about depth. It's built on the quiet comfort of knowing that even when temptation appears, you both choose respect. You choose to protect each other's dignity, not by control, but by trust. It's important to understand that choosing respect doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. It's okay to be honest about what stirs your insecurity, to communicate your needs with openness rather than accusation. But the difference lies in intention. Are you speaking to heal or to hurt? Are you seeking reassurance or control? Respect means trusting that your value doesn't diminish in comparison to anyone else's presence. People often believe that love is tested in grand gestures, in staying faithful, in choosing one person for life. But the truth is, it's tested in smaller, quieter ways. It's tested when you choose to smile instead of scowl, to listen instead of accuse, to understand instead of assume. Each of these moments builds the kind of trust that no temptation can undo. Choosing respect over reaction doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful. It shows that you have mastered yourself, and self-mastery is the rarest form of strength, because anyone can love when they feel secure. But to love even when your pride trembles, to stay calm when your heart aches, that is loyalty in its truest form. So, temptation appears, remember that your reaction defines more than the moment. It defines your character. The person who chooses respect doesn't do so because they are blind to the threat, but because they understand that nothing worth keeping is ever protected by fear. It's protected by trust, grace, and the quiet strength of someone who knows their worth cannot be shaken by comparison. In the beginning, love feels like a storm of wonder. Every message lights up your day, every glance feels electric, and every conversation seems to open a new world. You wake up eager, hearts beat faster, and life feels drenched in color. But storms always settle. The rhythm slows, the thrill softens, and the once sparkling connection begins to feel familiar, almost ordinary. It's at this point, when excitement fades and routine takes its place, that the real test of time begins. It's not about how much love burns in the beginning, but how much it endures when the fire becomes a steady flame. The truth that many struggle to accept is that no relationship stays in perpetual bloom. The butterflies that once fluttered in your chest eventually grow quiet, replaced by something less intoxicating but far more meaningful. In those moments, love is no longer a feeling that happens to you. It becomes a choice you make every single day. And that choice, repeated over time, is what defines loyalty. The test of time doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in slowly, almost invisibly. It shows up in the mundane mornings when you've run out of things to talk about, in the quiet evenings when both of you are tired and distracted, in the small disappointments that no longer spark passionate apologies. It's the subtle drift that begins not with betrayal, but with indifference. And that is when you begin to see whether your connection was built on novelty or on something deeper, patience, respect, understanding. When love is new, it's easy to be kind. It's easy to forgive, to laugh, to care. But when the years stretch on and the newness fades, kindness becomes an act of strength. That's when you see what your love is really made of. The test of time isn't glamorous. It's quiet, almost invisible. But it's the one test that separates what is fleeting from what is forever. I once heard an older couple say that the secret to their 50 years together wasn't passion or perfection. It was commitment to small things. They still made tea for each other every morning. They still said thank you, even for the simplest gestures. They still tried to listen, even when they had already heard the same stories 100 times. Love doesn't grow by grand gestures, they said softly. It grows by tending to the small ones. There's truth in that. The test of time is not a single moment of endurance. It's 1,000 tiny moments of choosing to stay gentle, even when it would be easier not to. As time passes, you begin to see the layers of a person more clearly. The charm that once dazzled you fades into habit, and what remains is reality, their flaws, their routines, their moods. But this is where love deepens, if you let it. To love someone, after time has stripped away the thrill, is to love them with your eyes open. It's to see not what they make you feel, but who they truly are. And if you can still choose them then, after the noise quiets and the shine fades, that is real love, steady, imperfect, and enduring. People often mistake the loss of excitement for the loss of love. They chase the high of newness, believing that only passion can prove connection. But the truth is, passion is the spark, time is the hearth. The first ignites you, but the second keeps you warm. Love that survives the test of time isn't as dramatic, but it's far more profound. It's the kind that sits beside you through the ordinary days and still feels like home. When you begin to understand this, you stop measuring love by how thrilling it feels and start measuring it by how safe it makes you. You realize that the quiet, uneventful days are not signs of failure, but signs of peace. There's beauty in comfort, though we often overlook it. The thrill of beginnings may fade, but in its place grows something stronger, trust. Time will always challenge love. It will dull the edges of excitement and expose the raw truths beneath. It will ask whether your affection depends on adrenaline or on acceptance. And if you endure that question with grace, you discover that love is not something that happens to you. It's something you build brick by brick, day after day. Many people walk away too soon, thinking that the absence of excitement means the end, but sometimes it's only the beginning of a deeper connection, one where love matures from infatuation into partnership, from romance into reliability. The butterflies that once fluttered wildly don't disappear, they simply land. They rest quietly, content in the knowing that they have found a place to stay. The test of time teaches us that love doesn't need to constantly thrill to be real. It just needs to remain. It needs to survive the boredom, the misunderstandings, the years of repetition. And when it does, when it continues to show up after time has done its work, you begin to see that loyalty isn't measured by intensity. It's measured by consistency. To still believe, even when it's not exciting anymore, is to understand love in its purest form, not as a fleeting feeling, but as a steadfast promise. There comes a moment in every relationship when distance appears, not always physical, but emotional. It can arrive suddenly, without explanation. One day, things feel close and effortless. The next, there's a quiet gap between words, a subtle shift in energy that leaves you uncertain. You start to sense withdrawal, the kind that feels like standing on a shore watching someone you love drift a little further away each day. It's in those moments that love faces one of its hardest trials, the test of distance. This is when you're asked to decide whether you will hold space or try to control what you fear losing. Distance is not always abandonment. Sometimes it is simply the soul's way of breathing. People pull away not only because they stop caring, but because they are trying to find themselves again. Life presses down on everyone in different ways. Expectations, failures, fear of not being enough. And when that weight becomes too heavy, some retreat into quiet. They need to sit with their own thoughts, to remember who they are beneath the noise of the world and the demands of love. Yet for the one left waiting, that silence can feel unbearable. It can trigger every hidden insecurity, the worry of being replaced, forgotten, or no longer wanted. This is where many stumble. The instinct to close the distance, to chase, to demand answers becomes overwhelming. You start to send one too many messages, to ask one too many questions, to overthink every pause. It comes from love, but also from fear. The fear that if you don't fight to keep their attention, you will lose it forever. But here lies the paradox. The harder you grasp, the further they drift. True connection cannot be forced closer by control. It can only be invited back through understanding. Holding space is not the same as doing nothing. It is one of the most active forms of love because it demands faith. It means allowing someone the room to breathe even when every part of you aches to close the gap. It means trusting that what's meant for you does not need to be chased. It only needs to be respected. This kind of patience isn't weakness. It's strength wrapped in gentleness. It says, I see you. I trust you. Take your time. There's a story about a woman who once loved someone who would often retreat into long silences. At first, she panicked each time he did. She'd call repeatedly, demand explanations, and plead for reassurance. The more she tried to hold on, the colder he became. Then one day, she stopped chasing. She began writing letters she never sent, pouring her heart into words that were meant for herself, not for him. Weeks later, he returned calmer, more open, and when she asked why, he said, "Because you gave me silence instead of judgment. That silence made me feel safe enough to come back." That's what it means to hold space, to let someone find their way without losing yourself in the process. It's important to remember that distance does not always signal the end. Sometimes it's the pause before growth. When two people are too close for too long, they can forget where one ends and the other begins. Space allows perspective. It gives each heart a chance to rediscover its rhythm. Without that, love can suffocate under its own weight. Distance teaches patience, and patience in turn deepens connection. But holding space is not blind waiting. It doesn't mean ignoring neglect or accepting emotional indifference. It means knowing when to step back with grace, not desperation. It means setting boundaries rooted in respect, not fear. It's about understanding that love cannot be nurtured through control. It grows best in freedom. There's beauty in letting things breathe. There's power in trusting the bond enough to withstand silence. When you hold space, you tell the other person, "I'm here, but I won't cage you. I believe in what we've built." That belief often becomes the invisible thread that keeps two hearts connected even when they're miles apart. Time and distance reveal what words often cannot, whether affection was real or simply convenient. If love endures the distance, it's because it was never built on constant reassurance. It was built on faith. And if it fades, then perhaps it wasn't meant to last. But even then, you walk away knowing you didn't lose yourself in the effort to hold on. The test of distance teaches one of love's hardest truths, that you cannot keep someone by clinging tighter. You can only invite them to stay by showing them that your love is spacious enough to include their freedom. Those who pass this test do so not by chasing what drifts, but by standing still with grace, trusting that what is real will always return. And when it does, it comes back stronger, because love that survives distance learns to breathe, and in learning to breathe, it learns how to last. So, what do these tests truly reveal? That loyalty isn't about blind devotion. It's about emotional maturity. It's not about passing every test. It's about understanding why the test exists in the first place. When a man tests your loyalty, he's really asking, can I trust your heart with my vulnerability? And when you show up, calm, kind, grounded, and real, you don't just prove loyalty, you inspire transformation, because true loyalty doesn't change with circumstances. It anchors love through them.